Yeah, I know I did a similar joke 2.5 years ago. Get over it. So while the next big video is in production, I thought I'd speak a little bit about something that's really bothered me. I recently watched a few Spongebob episodes from season 13 out of, I guess, morbid curiosity. After all, I hated season 12, and the only episodes I had seen from season 13 up until a few weeks ago were the first two episodes and the Christmas episode, which I had already reviewed. Of the episodes I watched recently, My Friend Patty was dull and stupid, Swimming Fools was just alright, and Dopey Dick is something I can genuinely say I like. Squidbird was going to be the review, but then I saw Friendiversary and I knew it was an episode I wanted to talk about on this channel. It is legitimately bottom 10 bad, on the level of A Pal for Gary or Truth or Square. Let's start with the very derivative concept of this episode. This episode takes a similar concept to Are You Happy Now and has very similar problems to that episode. In that episode, SpongeBob tried to get Squidward to have a happy memory after he mentioned that he never had a happy memory. Obviously that episode had its problems and it was especially hated by the fanbase. But if you can believe it, Friendiversary personally to me is the worst episode. In the former, at least SpongeBob's heart is in the right place. He's genuinely concerned about Squidward and wants him to have a happy memory. The episode we're talking about today has SpongeBob show blatant disregard for someone he claims is supposed to be his friend. It's not the SpongeBob any of us are used to. In Choir Boys, yeah, he was annoying, and in Squid's Visit, yeah, he was creepy, but this episode combines both of those in a way that's just unsettling to watch. SpongeBob isn't blocked off from Squidward's discomfort. He's genuinely aware of it and doesn't care. At least Choir Boys leaves room for you to give the benefit of the doubt on that level. This episode decidedly does not. But going back to Are You Happy Now? Squidward is portrayed as a genuinely depressed, suicidal character which isn't dealt with in any kind of tactful way, especially for a children's cartoon. This episode decides to do the same thing with another mental condition, this time paranoia and anxiety. Squidward is genuinely afraid of SpongeBob trying to jog his memory because just about every time it ends up hurting him. SpongeBob even breaks into his house at the beginning of the episode. And this is where I should mention that this is the reason that it is personally the worst episode to me. On an objective level, you could debate all day about which episode is technically worse, but because Squidward's struggle with anxiety in Friendiversary is more relatable to me personally, I find this episode to be worse. If someone's mental conditions are flipped, you could easily find Are You Happy Now to be the worst episode. Regardless, both of them are terrible. Now, the biggest problem is that Squidward's anxiety is played straight. If someone popped out of nowhere at random times and you happened to get injured every time they did this, yeah, you'd be on edge probably. You'd probably want to get a restraining order against that person, but then you realize you already did that over a decade ago. And yeah, it's an even worse problem. Speaking of which, I actually think that if they swapped Squidward for Patrick, this could have been a much better episode. I mean, Patrick is supposed to be SpongeBob's best friend, right? Maybe seeing SpongeBob forget that could have an interesting story. But because you have to set up Squidward getting seriously injured multiple times, the actual memory loss portion of the episode doesn't really get the time it needs. It's some of the dumbest pacing for the story they're trying to tell, and it kills any potential for the jokes to be funny. There's no reason you couldn't tell this story with Patrick, cut out the torture, and lengthen the memory loss. You might have to change why the memory loss happens, but you could still tell that story and probably do a better job. With the episode we got, though, it's a particularly bad version of the Squidward torture archetype that we've already seen plenty of times on this show. Rule of thumb, if Squidward is just trying to enjoy his day, the episode's probably gonna suck. Squidward works best when he's a dick to SpongeBob and Patrick, not their punching bag. And I must mention that there are people that actually like this episode, and while sure, it's fine for people to have their own opinions, the reasons I see for why people like this episode are flimsy, to say the least. A lot of people like the references to old episodes, which are structured terribly, in my opinion. When Krabs sends SpongeBob and Squidward off to recreate the old memories, the first thing they do is redo scenes we watched in the same episode. I mean, wow. This is already something you just don't do under any circumstances, but they managed to make it unfit for the story they were telling, since the whole reason they're recreating these memories is because SpongeBob's memory of the safe combination is tied to a memory he had with Squidward. So, unless Krabs told SpongeBob the safe combination the previous day, recreating memories from earlier in the episode has no chance of jogging SpongeBob's memory. And then we get to the references to classic episodes, which I understand were nice for older fans to see, but liking the episode because of the references is like enjoying a poop sandwich because it has a slice of bacon on it. They go through the camping episode, without Patrick for some reason, dying for pie, and bubble stand. But I'm gonna let you guess. If you haven't seen the episode, what do you think is the episode reference that breaks the camel's back and brings back SpongeBob's memories? Snowball effect? Shanghaied? Maybe Band Geeks? Well, if you gave me 1,000 years, I would have never come up with life insurance. Yes, you heard that right. Life insurance. I mean, yeah, it's an alright episode, but why did they think that it needed to be the memory that suddenly makes SpongeBob remember the save combination? Did they want to reuse animation? I am so confused as to why this was the magnum opus reference they wanted to use. Hell, if you wanted to use a modern episode, honestly, you could have picked Hello Bikini Bottom. Most fans seem to like that one anyway. And that's not even mentioning the time in this episode where they reference an episode accidentally. Yeah, I'm not joking. There's a scene in the episode where Squidward's paranoid, and he looks at a photo of a Kelpie G concert and then uses a magnifying glass to see SpongeBob also at that concert. It's not framed like a reference to Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom. It's framed like an event where Squidward doesn't remember SpongeBob being there, and then he's shocked to remember he was actually there. It's like they were going for some stock generic memory, but accidentally referenced an episode when they didn't mean to. Because if this was intentional, why would you reference an episode that most fans don't like? It's not that I have a problem with episode references in general, I have a problem with them being done badly. References can be good, but if the rest of the episode is terrible, then they don't help. People don't really like Lost and Found despite all the references and Easter eggs in the background, so why is everyone giving this episode a pass? So where does this episode rank among the worst SpongeBob episodes ever? Well, ever since I did that ranking series, my opinion has actually changed. For some reason I put Atlantis SquarePantis as my worst episode of the series. I don't think that anymore. SpongeBob You're Fired is probably my least favorite right now, with Yours, Mine, and Mine and Boating Buddies not far behind. But then, probably Friendiversary, then Truth or Square, then Atlantis SquarePantis. Season 13 has had more room to add more bad episodes, and they probably have, I just haven't seen every episode in the season.